My first thing with regards to shooting is the number one way to improve shooting is to start on smaller baskets with a smaller ball with younger players. So, and I know that I mention that frequently, and it becomes a sore subject, and nobody wants to have their son, 11-year-old son, using a, even a size 6 or a women's ball or even a size 5, youth ball. Everybody needs them using that NBA basketball and shooting on a 10-foot hoop because that's what NBA players do. But 10-year-olds aren't NBA players. And until we realize that, we're going to continue at the high school, college level to get players with bad habits who have developed a way to compensate for their lack of strength, for their lack of hand size at an early age. So when I was young, I really only played on a 10-foot hoop and with a min-sized basketball, but I also didn't really start playing or shooting a lot until I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And so now players are starting younger and younger, and we're worried about getting our 10,000 hours and getting our reps in and stuff like that at a young age. So we're developing more habits at these younger ages. So once, I'm guessing most coaches here are high school coaches, is that correct? Okay, so once you get players at the high school level, nobody comes to you, generally speaking, with no experience, right? So every player that we get comes with habits, comes with experience, comes with certain behaviors, comes with certain knowledge that they've developed over their 1, 2, 3, 7 years of prior basketball playing experience, whether that's come from just shooting with their dad in the front yard, or whether that's because they've been playing on travel teams since they were in first grade. And so it's great to talk about what techniques or how I would teach a beginner shooter, but by the time they're in high school, they're not a beginner shooter. They may not shoot well, but everybody comes with a prior body of knowledge and a prior experience. You're not getting a blank tablet to work with. Okay, everybody's already coming with stuff. And so to me, and especially at my level, junior college, most of what I'm doing is trying to correct compensations that have developed at younger ages. So this year I have new players, one of whom, so I would say in Florida at the junior college level, a lot of what I get and what we tend to get is players who are too small to be post players to move on to a Division I or Division II level, and they need to become guards. So a lot of 5'10", 5'11", former centers, former high school centers that just aren't big enough anymore. So because of that, I have a girl who, when she first came, she shot from here, and I have a girl who, when she came, she brought it up in 3 distinct motions where she went 1, 2, 3 into a shot. I have a guard who shoots clearly from the left side of her body this way, and then I have a 6'2" girl, European, who actually shoots from right here. So these are 4 different things that I'm working with on a daily basis to try to correct and improve while also trying to remain competitive and showcase these players, because 3 of those are sophomores and 1's a freshman, and the freshman's a qualifier who's going to sign after this year anyway. So none of them I will have for more than 1 season. Right? So, I had 1 already. We've been in the process of trying to change her shot over the course of the last year. But 3 of them, 2 of them are transfers. 1 of them is a freshman, but she'll leave after this year. So it's a matter of, short time work in the midst of a competitive season. We've already had 20 Division I coaches into our gym watching us play. So it's not like, even though we're not in season yet, we're not into where we need to perform, there is a certain element of performing even in our practice situations for college coaches. So it presents a lot of constraints upon what we're doing. And so a lot of what I do in terms of working with their shooting is trying to get them to change their shot without them really realizing that they're changing their shot. And so I'll get to that in a second. But in terms of shooting, one of the two biggest things that I have a problem with is the idea of we're just going to shoot game shots at game speed from game spots, and that's our competitive shooting. And again, I'll continue to go over that a little bit more, but to me, you're missing the most important part of what happens in a game, and that's the decision to shoot. And so, to me, any drill that you do that does not have a decision-making component is not a game shooting drill. That does not make it incorrect, but it's just not game shooting. And so if you are working with somebody on improving their game percentages or so forth, that's not it. So to me, anytime we're doing a drill, and this is shooting or anything, we have to start with the game. Once you're going to remove yourself from the game, you're automatically sacrificing something. Okay, so ultimately, anything that we're doing is trying to improve performance in a game. Once we take whatever we're going to do outside of the game, we're sacrificing something. So if we're going to take shooting outside of the game, okay, is what we're doing worth it? So why are we taking shooting outside of the game? Generally, we're going to say we're going to do shooting drills because we want to improve shooting. Okay, or we want to get more repetitions. So we're going to say, okay, if I played, 5-on-5 for an hour, maybe all of my players might only get 15, 20 shots. That's not enough shots to improve. Therefore, I need to do a shooting drill so that I can get 100, 200 repetitions during practice. Okay? It's a valid reason to take something outside of a game. Okay? But those are the two basic reasons why we're going to remove a skill from a game situation as opposed to just playing games all the time. All right, is to focus on something, to improve something specific, and or to get specific repetitions of that skill. And again, I'm mainly talking about shooting here, but this goes for any skill. All right. So once we decide that we're going to sacrifice something to get these repetitions or to improve something specific, now we need to decide, well, all right, so I'm going to improve shooting. And so what I do with my players is we do individual workouts on a voluntary basis every single week. All right? It's up to them to schedule it with me, and it's up to them to come to their session and tell me what they want to work on. Okay? Whatever they tell me they want to work on, that's what we're going to work on. I'll come up with the drills, I'll tell them what, kind of what to do, et cetera, but they have to come. First of all, they have to take the initiative to schedule it. Okay? Because this is time outside of practice, right? We have our normal team practices 2 hours a day. This is stuff that goes on in the morning around their class schedule. So they have to come to me, they have to schedule, okay, I want to work out, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Okay, great. So then they show up at the court, 7:55. All right, what do you want to work on today? Okay, I want to improve shooting. Everybody says that. I want to improve shooting. Okay, but what do you want to improve? How are we going to improve your shooting? Okay, and I hear this, and I see it all the time, Twitter and videos and so forth. Well, this is a shooting drill because we're going to improve shooting. But what are you doing in this drill that's actually improving shooting? What are you attacking? Are you just trying to get up more reps? Because that's different than saying, well, I have a hitch in my shot and I need to get rid of this hitch, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay? Those are two different things. Again, one's not better than the other. It depends on the situation, depends on the player that you're working with. Right? So I try to get the players to be a little bit more specific. All right, so last year, I had a girl who finished second in the country in three-point shooting percentage. When she got to me, she was a freshman. When she got there in the fall, she honestly told me she didn't think of herself as a shooter. Okay? She made 60 out of 120 during games. She played roughly 24 or 25 games because she was missed, because she was hurt for a couple. Okay, so she made over 3 a game basically at 50%. All right? When I worked out with her early in the season, one of the things that she told me she wanted to work on is she said, look, my shot's okay, but when I start breathing hard, I think that's when I miss shots. Okay? Now, lots of people focus on fatigue. Okay, well, we need to be able to shoot when we're tired. We need to shoot when we're tired, so we're going to run a lot. We're going to shoot our free throws at the end of practice, things like that. Shooting when you're fatigued is different than shooting when you're breathing hard. Okay? You can start breathing hard in the first minute of the game. You're probably not really fatigued yet. Okay? So we started to construct drills that were based around, basically making her run sprints a couple times, and then we're shooting the ball because that's what she felt like she needed to improve in her shooting. Okay, that was very specific to her. We didn't do the same workout with her that we did with somebody else. Other people had different things. My players this year were not anywhere close to that, that stage of development. Okay, but her technique, her basic technique, her movement without the ball, her decisions to shoot, all that was pretty good. So we were at a fairly advanced level with her. And so every player that I work with is a matter of during that individual session is attacking their individual needs. And so when we're talking about how we're going to improve shooting, all right, the three major kind of big categories where I think you can make changes, okay, or improve somebody's shooting is technique, all right, mental skills, more or less confidence, and then, for lack of a better word, game shooting. All right? And so within technique, to me, you have two things to look at. You have the athletic skills part, and then you actually have your sport-specific part. So a lot of mistakes that I see in shooting, again, many of them born of habits that developed when they were young, are athletics problems. So they're either not strong enough, or there's a lack of coordination in the shot. And so when I'm working with, so for instance, two of the players I'm working with now, I would say some of their issues, if not all of them, are a lack of coordination. And so when I'm looking at coordination, I'm tending to look at how their body works together. I would include rhythm in that a little bit. Certainly balance is an element, but can their upper and lower body work together? Or is there something, and it's kind of hard to describe, but I can see it when I watch shooters because I've been working with so many players and so many shooters over the years. So, I can see something subtle in a player's shot, and I'm like, to me, it's a coordination issue. That they're losing power, they're leaking power somewhere from the time that they're pushing off the ground to the time that they release the ball. And that might be the way that they bring the ball up. It might be, again, like bringing the ball up behind their head. Their hips might come forward too early. It could be a number of different issues. And the best way to attack that issue isn't always with more practice or even specific drills on the court. A lot of times it's a matter of trying to develop their coordination generally and hoping that this general coordination development will transfer on the court. So it's one of the reasons I like to teach and do Olympic lifts with players, which may or may not be something that is available to you with your program or that you have experience doing. But in my world, I function as every level of our staff. So I am the strength and conditioning coach, shooting coach, and head coach. So I do Olympic lifts with the players, especially the players that I think need it. I don't do it with all of them because it's me and 12 players in a weight room that's a public facility, so I don't even have a dedicated space. So, it's not a perfect situation, but we make do. So, I have to sacrifice some things, and sometimes that's sacrificing Olympic lifts with some players who I know need more instruction that I don't have time to do at that moment. But especially with the shooters, we're doing Olympic lifts to try to develop their coordination a little bit. I'll bring medicine balls out just to try to get that connection between. So it's one thing, pretty much any college player can stand at the three-point line and get the ball to the rim without using any lower body. The basketball is just not that heavy. The basket's not that far away. But you try to do that with a medicine ball, and it's a little bit different. Now you have to be able to use your body and coordinate your body together to get the ball going high. So generally when we're doing a med ball exercise, my instruction is simply, throw the ball as high as you can. And I just want to see them starting to get their upper and lower body together. Because if they're doing it in kind of two motions, it's not going to go very high. You know, if I extend my legs first and then I throw the ball, it's going to be different than if everything's fluid and coming through and I'm releasing it and there's good timing. And so I'm using these exercises off the court, and then we're immediate, like we'll bring the basketball or the medicine ball on court, right off the floor, and then we'll go and we'll start shooting again. And so we're trying to teach the basic coordination and then move it onto the court and hope that that coordination then transfers. So that's an idea of focusing on the athletic skills part of technique. There's obviously then your basic, how do you shoot the ball? You know, and I'm not even going to go into how I would shoot the ball, because at this point I work with so many different players, I don't even have a definite way that I think everybody should shoot. Because I've worked with 50% three-point shooters that shoot differently than 40%, you know, and I mean, we were top 10 in the nation last year in three-point percentage and three-point makes, relying heavily on 4 players, and all 4 shot very different. You know, we had a point guard who would shoot step-back threes from here. We had a shooting guard who was great running off screens that would shoot from right here. The 50% shooter basically shot from somewhere in here, and then we had a 6'1" power forward who shot fairly high. So they all shot differently, and I really didn't talk at all about their physical or their sport-specific technique. You know, with one of the girls, we worked specifically on balance. When she got here as a freshman, she shot 25% from the three-point line in high school, albeit on the international line. She's from Sweden. But she came and she had hurt her ankle the previous season. So her ability to decelerate and her balance was off when she got here. So a lot of what we worked on, especially her freshman year, when she came in for her individual sessions, is for a while, we didn't even touch a basketball. Most of it was like learning how to run better, jump, stop, etc. Because that is how she was going to become a better shooter. There was really no problems with her, you know, upper body mechanics, if you will. Everything centered on, or most of her mistakes were stopping, you know, and getting on balance when she stopped. And so just doing more stationary shooting drills, she could make 100 shots in a row. You know, I've rebounded, and their favorite drill was shoot until you miss 2 in a row and then move to the next spot, right? And I'd be there and I could rebound for 150, 175 shots before they missed 2 in a row, right? So they're actual shooting, but then you get them on the move, and now they're not as successful. And it's not because their shot changes, it's because how they get into their shot, their stance, their balance, their deceleration, right? So, you know, I know there's a lot of arguments about whether to turn or not to turn in terms of technique. You know, everybody understands. So whether I'm, you know, 10 toes to the rim or whether I turn to the side this way, I don't care. I don't care what players do. My feeling is the degree that you turn ultimately depends on how fast you're moving before you catch the ball. Which is why when you watch somebody like Steph Curry shoot pregame shots where he's not moving and he's just in rhythm, he has a very little turn. You watch Steph Curry coming off a screen, especially if he's like coming off a ball screen going right, he might be turned and it might look like he's turned to the opposite sideline because he's going so fast and he's stopping so quickly that he's using this turn to break. All right? And so I think some people were confusing the difference of pre-shot movement with actual shooting technique. Not always, but I think there is something to that. Okay? And so that's why, to me, it's not something that I'm concerned with. What I'm concerned with is getting players to feel comfortable shooting the ball and get something that can be repeatable. All right? So when we talk about an optimal position from which to shoot, my general test is how are you going to stand? If I asked you to jump as high as you can, how are you going to stand? Right? And so some people will stand with a fairly narrow stance, some will get a little bit wider. And to me, whatever stance you get in, if you're going to jump as high as you can, that's probably your optimal stance for shooting. Okay? Now, that stance then is going to change as soon as you incorporate movement. Because my optimal stance for shooting is going to differ from my optimal stance from breaking. Right? So if I'm running forward, okay, and I need to stop quickly, I have to do one of two things, generally speaking. I either really need to lower my hips, okay, so that I sit down here and I stop my momentum by getting really low, or I'm going to turn my leg. So if I'm not going to bend into a deep squat position to stop, I'm going to turn my leg. Okay, now there's some other things that we can do. I can take an exaggerated long step as my, to slow myself down and then start to get low. So there's little variations of that. But generally speaking, these are kind of our two basic ways. I'm either going to squat low or I'm going to turn into my stop, right? And so how you determine how you're going to stop is then going to affect your shooting, right? So typically we tell youth players, you need to squat low when you're going to shoot, right? You need to squat low, you need to get more power, et cetera, et cetera. But if I squat low, I mean, you don't see any NBA players squatting low when they shoot. Certainly not on a jump shot. You know, some of them will on a free throw. Why, I don't know. Dirk Nowitzki liked it. He shot 90% from the free throw line. Who am I to criticize, right? But you don't have time at that level. And at my level, we don't have time to get into a deep squat to be able to shoot, right? So I had two of the players that I'm working with, that's what their coaches had taught them, right? So they come in and, first time I'm really shooting with them and they're really bending into a deep low squat. And I'm like, why? What are you doing? I'm like, how do you even get a shot off? And my coach told me to bend my knees. My coach told me to bend my knees. I was like, all right, let's try not bending your knees, okay? And so again, part of that depends on, the age that I'm working with, but it's also a means of how are we going to stop in order to shoot the ball, right? And so there is a balance between our optimal position for shooting and our optimal position for stopping. And somewhere in between those two optimals is probably where you're going to end up shooting. And sometimes it's going to be sometimes you're going to have a shooter who's such a good shooter, you can sacrifice their optimal shooting position to value speed. Some aren't going to be as good a shooter, so you have to sacrifice some speed to value the shooting position. Does that make sense? So if I'm coming, and so some players, that's why some players end up strictly being, spot up, standstill shooters. Okay, either because they can't get into a good position off the movement, or it affects their shot too much, or their technique too much when they're on the move. So the exact position that I'm going to use to shoot is going to vary by my speed of movement, whether I'm dribbling the ball or catching the ball, and then the defense. Because defense has an effect on your basic biomechanics of your shot. So I believe it's Adam Gorman did this research out of AIS. Well, he used to be at the AIS in Australia. I don't know if he's there anymore. But he's done research that just having a defensive player, not only obviously does it affect percentages, having a defensive present, but it affects how you shoot the ball. So you will tend to shoot the ball a little bit quicker, and you will tend to shoot the ball a little bit higher, I believe, in the presence of a defensive player. And so that's one of the things that problems that I have with when we talk about shooting, because we talk about, well, you just need more reps, you just need more reps, you just need more reps. And typically when we're talking about more reps, we're talking about block shooting, where all I'm doing is shooting, and maybe even constant block shooting, where all I'm doing is shooting one specific shot from one specific area, and making countless numbers of shots in a row, right? And if Gorman's research is accurate and just the presence of a defensive player changes your basic biomechanics of the shot, what are those repetitions of uncontested shots? What are they improving? You're improving a skill that's not the same as what you do in a game, and that's not even taking into consideration the other components of the skill, like I said, the decision-making part. So, I try, and actually I'll get into that later, but to me, those things are going to vary your technique, and that's one of the three main areas that I look at in terms of improvement, okay? And so when I'm working, like for instance with the girls that I'm working with now, in terms of getting them to improve their technique without really getting them to think about what they're doing, because I don't want them getting in games and overthinking, well, I need to have my elbow here, I need to bend here, I need to have my knee here. I don't want them thinking about those things. So most of the drills that we do at the beginning are things that get them away from their current technique without them having to consciously think about it. So we do things like, I have them do ankle bounces until they feel ready, and then they just shoot the ball. And we do things like, some of them I'll make to do deep squats. Some of them I won't let squat. It kind of depends on who I'm working with. We do 90-degree turns. We do shots off 1 foot. We do hops into shots off 1 foot. We do, what other ones do I like? We do 180 into shots. Some of the stuff that we do, like the girls who shoot from the left side of their body, we pretty much only shoot off right-handed dribbles right now. So forcing them to bring the ball and come a little bit more to the right side of their body, as opposed to letting them shoot how they want and me sitting there going, nope, move it over, move it over, move it over. Nope, you need to bring it here. Like, the only thing I say to her is straight line. So I don't care where she releases it from, but I'm trying to get her to get rid of having a circle up to here. And instead, if she wants to shoot from here, it's got to be a straight line to here. That's all we're trying to improve, right? So off a right-handed dribble, bring the left hand to the ball, and now it's a straight line up instead of catching and making a circle. And just that simple change has, well, she just hurt her shoulder again, so she hasn't been in practice this week, but that simple change in the first couple weeks of doing it, like this week I asked my players to do scouting reports on all their teammates, and for this girl, they all called her a shooter. She shot 22% from the three-point line last year, and now they're calling her a shooter. So we'll see if it transfers into games. Well, first we'll see if she gets healthy enough to play games, but then we'll see if it transfers. But right now, that simple change has made a decent effect without her having to spend a lot of time on form shooting or anything like that. But what I'm trying to do with these drills is I'm basically trying to perturb their habit. So I want to put something in the drill that forces them away from their current habit so that they start to adopt something new. And so, for instance, with the girl that shot behind her head, it's very unnatural to do the ankle bounces holding a ball here, right? So she starts to lower it. As soon as she does the ankle bounces, she starts to lower it down a little bit. The 6'2" girl who shoots from here, she starts to raise the shot when she does ankle bounce. So she holds the ball here when she does it. So she's starting to raise her shot without me having to say anything. And the transfer to practices so far is not, it's not one-to-one, it's not 100%, but you can start to see some changes, and it's just inconsistent right now because we've only been doing it for a month or two, right? So it's going to take time. And what I've started to see over the last, this is my third year at the school, so what I'm starting to realize is for people who are changing their shots in this way and in this kind of in this competitive situation where I don't have them for 6 months outside of the season where I can just dedicate to restarting, is it's not until the second season where I really see the improvements. So for instance, the girl that came with an ankle, she shot 25% in high school. Her freshman year, she shot 32% for us. Last year, she ended up at 38, 39%. It would have been higher, but she hurt her knee that season and had 2 bad games with a knee injury that dropped her percentage from the mid-40s. I have another girl who's practicing with me right now who came as a complete non-shooter. Played with me last year. She shot about 30% for the season last year. She's already finished her eligibility. She's just trying to get her GPA up. Once she transfers, my guess is her next season she's going to be at least a 33 to 35% shooter, right? Like college coaches are coming into the gym and going, does she always shoot this well? And because she's knocking down, in our scrimmages, she's a shooter now. Like she calls herself a shooter now. And stuff. And so, but it didn't happen her first year. That's basically the second year of working with her and making these changes. So that's one thing, it takes time, and obviously within the competitive season, you don't always have time. Okay, but I think some of these simple drills that we do as warm-ups, I occasionally make the whole team. We do our dynamic warm-up, and then we do our shooting warm-up. And our shooting warm-up usually is 5 minutes, and it's 1 minute each of some of these ankle bounces, 90-90, 180 degrees. And so everybody's doing them, but usually I'm only doing them because 2 or 3 people need it. It's not going to hurt the rest of the players, right? But we don't have time in the week to get enough repetitions just outside of practice. So we do 5 minutes of a shooting warm-up like that, and it really helps the 2 or 3 people that it's directed towards, and the other ones is just kind of added shots and a little bit of added plyometrics. So yeah, that's good for that. Like I said, the next kind of major category is mental skills, okay, which primarily is confidence. And if we're talking about drills, this is, I think, where the block constant practice has its effect. Just seeing the ball go through the basket, right? So the best way to build confidence is through demonstrated ability, okay? You can't just have somebody tell you you're good. You have to actually see it. You have to believe it. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we do. Where I am is, I would say to some extent we have a culture of shooting, and that's because we shoot a lot. We expect everybody to shoot, and everybody's allowed to shoot, and I don't take players out for shooting. So that allows for players to develop confidence. And so last year when I found out that the girl only shot 25% in high school, which was shocking to me because I remember the first day she walked in the gym, and I mean, she made like 23s in a row in her first day. And so I had no idea that I thought she was a shooter when I recruited her, and then I found out she only shot 25% in high school. And so I joked about it. I'm like, oh, so I can tell everybody that I'm the one who made you into a shooter. And she's like, while we were texting, she was like, laugh out loud, I guess you can. She's like, but honestly, you're the one that gave me confidence. And that's what we do, is because of the way that the amount of shots that we take and the amount that we value shooting, and again, not taking players out for missing shots, they shoot with more confidence. And to me, that's, for shooters, you can have all the technique in the world, but if you're not confident, you're not going to make shots. You look at throughout the NBA, and you take the top 10 shooters in the NBA, none of them shoot exactly the same. You look at Curry versus Korver versus Klay Thompson versus Redick versus, whoever else you want to use, Buddy Hield, whoever you want to use as your examples, whoever was a top 10 in three-point shooting last year, they all shoot differently. Some shoot better on the move, some don't. Some couple their three-point shooting with free throw shooting, some don't. Some it's not as close, right? Their techniques all differ, but they all have the confidence to shoot the ball. They all want the ball. They all want to take the shot. And that's something that we've developed, and a lot of it is just simply, giving players that freedom. I worked with a girl or a women's player in 2013 that was playing for a Division II school in New Mexico. So I met her in the preseason, and I saw her shooting around, and I was like, oh, she's not a bad shooter. I was like, what did you shoot last year from three? She's like, 14%. I was like, good God. I was like, what's your goal for this year? She's like, 40%. And I'm like, that's pretty optimistic. She ended up shooting, I think she shot like 37% for that season, and finished in the top 10 in her conference, our MAC conference, which is a pretty good conference. She did not change her technique at all. Nobody worked on her technique at all. She improved because she had a new coach. Her previous coach had completely killed all her confidence, would yank players out of the game anytime they missed a shot, yelled at her not to shoot the ball, et cetera, et cetera. New coach came in. It's all right, we're going to shoot threes. Let them fly. Let's do this. And then worked on getting better shots and taking better shots. So when your players know that they're allowed to shoot threes and that's what you're working for, sometimes you're in a less of a rush to jack the first time you get a look at the basket. So players take better shots. They ran stuff to get better shots. And so she went from a 14% shooter to a 37% shooter without doing anything to her technique, right? Shot selection and confidence, okay? And so the confidence, like I said, a couple of things along with confidence for mental skills is, which I don't want to go into too much because that's the basis of the second talk, but mistake response, how do you respond when you miss a shot? So that's one of the things that we talk about with our players, having a short memory. My proudest moment last year, my shooter, who's at Wichita State now, went 0 for 9 in a game. And I was very happy because the first season, when she was a freshman, she was our best shooter as a freshman, but if she missed 2 or 3 shots, she was done. She wasn't going to shoot again. And so just the fact that she kept shooting and she got up 9 threes, even though she missed them all, that's when I knew that we had kind of made that breakthrough, and they fully had the confidence, doesn't matter. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot. That's what I do. I'm a shooter. I get the ball. I'm open. I shoot the ball, right? That she went from missing shots and putting her head down to looking for the next shot, right? And that's what I'm talking about in terms of mistake response. And I'll leave the rest for the next talk. So the last part, like I said, I'm calling it game shooting because I don't really have a better title for it. But in terms of game shooting, I'm talking about all the things that affect your shot in a game, and specifically, to me, the 2 best ways to improve as a shooter then are shot selection and shot creation. Okay, so I can get better by taking better shots. Like I talked about the girl that was a 37% shooter. Okay, part of the reason she got better was confidence, but part of it, she took better shots. Part of that was her team. Part of that was her own, decision making. The second part is shot creation. The more shots that I can shoot, the better that I am, if I can make them, right? It's one thing. So last year I had the girl who was 50%. She was the second best shooter in the country. I did not consider her the best shooter on my team. I don't think anybody on my team considered her the best shooter on the team. Her shot selection was the best. She took shots she knew she was going to make. I had other girls who took harder shots, bless you. And so to me, shooting 43% on higher difficulty shots is probably a better shooter than shooting 50% on lower difficulty shots. My point guard shot 38% on threes. Most of her attempts were Harden-esque type step backs. Like she was a lot of times our offense. We ran ball screens, they switched. We basically dribble the ball too much, and then she would step back and she would hit threes over their post players, right? Those are high degree of difficulty shots, and she shot 38%. Like that girl is a shooter. So that's part of it. If you can hit more and more varied shots, that's one way to improve. The other way, like I said, is taking better shots. And then like I touched on earlier, things related to the game. So specifically, with Fee, it was shooting better when she was breathing heavy. Some people do need to be able to shoot late in the games because they get tired. So maybe that's a conditioning element. Maybe it's just they need to learn how to shoot because when you're fatigued, it's going to change your shot. Does that make sense? So, just like a simple study of doing 10 repetitions of a squat, your squat changes. The actual technique of a squat changes from your first rep to your 10th rep, right? So if a closed skill, non-dynamic type activity is the actual biomechanics are going to change just because of fatigue within 10 repetitions, certainly a more dynamic activity such as shooting a basketball is going to change when in the fourth quarter versus the first quarter, especially if you're playing heavy minutes. So being able to shoot under fatigue, that's another way to improve as a shooter. Again, to me, that's another way that you can create more shots for yourself. And so all this is leading to the 4 kind of drill categories that I use, right? And so I took this is kind of based on, what's his name, Anselai Bondarchuk, his model of periodization. He is most prominently known as a track and field coach, specifically working with throwers. He is popular among a certain segment of the population, especially among track and field coaches. And so these kind of drill categories are derived from his work with throwers. But the first is, and I'll go kind of down, but competitive exercises. And so again, this is where I get to the idea of people talk about game shots at game speed from game spots, and we also talk about game slippage, okay? To me, game slippage just means you're not practicing the same thing that happens in a game, all right? Now, the argument, of course, is, well, of course, there's defense there. Of course, you're not going to shoot, as high a percentage when you're defended as when you're in practice. To which I would respond, then why aren't you practicing against defense in practice? Why are you practicing something that's not going to happen in a game? All right? And again, as I said, there are reasons to do it, okay? But if you're talking about, I have a good shooter, her problem's not her technique, for her to improve, we need to shoot game shots. Game shots require a decision. So if there is not a defensive player and a passing option involved in the drill, to me it is not a game shooting drill, or it's not a competitive drill. Okay? So simply running fast into a shot does not make something a game shot. Okay? Simply saying that I run the flex offense, so we shoot jump shots from the elbow, does not make it a game shot. Okay? Running, 3-on-0 versions of your offense to take shots that you would get in your offense, not a game shot. Okay? Now, that might be how you teach your offense. It has value. It's helping you get reps, et cetera, but it's not game shooting. Okay? Games involve decisions. All right? I did a clinic a while ago in Chicago. And so we were doing some basic shooting drills. A lot of good players. Two of the players that were in that clinic, they were like 3rd or 4th grade now. They're both top 100 players in their class in high school now. And they were already good when they're in 3rd or 4th grade. So we're doing regular shooting drills. They're shooting well. So then we do a very simple 4-on-2 shooting drill. I call it Serbia shooting because I got it from my friend who coaches in Iran, who coached with a Serbian head coach. So that's why I call it Serbia shooting. So 4 offensive players, 2 defensive players. Offensive players are stationary. Defensive players are moving. Depending on how you want to do it, we generally, if the defense can force more than 2 passes, we give the defense a point. Because there's always 2 open players, so it really shouldn't be that hard to get an open shot. So I do this drill with these really talented players, and all of a sudden, nobody can make a shot. Their parents are starting to get anxious in the crowd. They're yelling at it. X, shoot the ball. X, shoot the ball. And you could completely see how a simple decision, again, there were 2 defenders, so it's not that hard to find somebody who's open. You have 4 offensive players, 2 defensive players, okay? Not that hard to find an open player. But now they had to make a decision. They weren't the designated shooter, right? They weren't running in and coach is there passing them the ball and, all right, you're going to run to the free throw line, you're going to shoot the ball. Now they had their teammates there, they had a defensive player there. So when I catch the ball, is this a good shot? Is my teammate more open than me? Is my teammate a better shooter than me? How close is this defensive player? Does he make me uncomfortable? Do I feel open? All these things are things that we don't think about consciously, but they're affecting our decisions to shoot. Okay? And to me, this is a major reason why we see game slippage. because we practice and we say, oh yeah, NBA players, if you can't shoot 80% in a gym by yourself, you're not going to shoot 40% in a game. And I'm like, well, if you can shoot 80%, like why are you only shooting 40% in a game? Because you're not practicing against defense. You're not practicing making those decisions. And even if you run a play, and I say, all right, I'm going to run this play to get this player this shot. We run it perfectly. We make the pass. We catch the ball. There's still a decision that has to be made. I still have to decide as I'm catching the ball, am I still going to shoot this? This play's run for me. Am I going to shoot this? Or out of my corner of my eye, do I see my teammate that set the screen slipping to the basket and they're wide open? And so now I have that moment of doubt as I shoot the ball. Okay? If I never practice with these players involved and everything I do is just, I'm in a gym by myself, there's nobody here, I don't have to worry about whether my teammate's open, I don't have to worry about the score, etc., these things affect shooting. As much as I say this, and as much as my friend Harry from Finland say this, we just can't get people to acknowledge this. They just say, oh no, it's just game slippage, that's what happens. Okay? But it happens because we don't practice it. We don't practice game shots. We think that just because we run fast and just because we shoot at the top of the key and that's where I shoot in the game, that I'm shooting a game shot. It's not a game shot. If you do not have a decision and a passing option, it is not a game shot. Okay? So we do simple drills that are almost game shots where now the player has to just make the choice. It's just a simple partner shooting. There's not a passing option, but they have to make the choice whether they're open on the catch to shoot the ball. And if they're not open, then they dribble into a pull-up. Okay? That's the first step. That's our basic shooting drill, is a two-person shooting drill, pass, I close out. And now my shooter has to decide, am I open to shoot or do I need to, dribble into a shot? Right? But most of what we do in terms of our game shooting is we play games. It's 2-on-2, 3-on-3, etc. We have a couple, drills that are derived off that, okay, that, expand out on partner shooting and add a passing option and add a second defensive player and stuff like that. But we do a lot of what I consider shooting practice is 2-on-2, 3-on-3. I saw the very end of Alabama coach's presentation, and some of the ones that he was doing with the scripted stuff, with the 4-on-4, the 3-on-3, the pitch to the side, shot, same idea, right? Are you open on the catch, or is that close out there and you need to drive it and make the next pass, right? Those are game shooting drills, and he showed some ways of getting game shooting drills, within the context of your offense, building your offense as well. So the next step down then, specific development shots are game-like shots, right? And these are these are kind of the partner shooting drill that I mentioned. So we take the shooting outside of a game, okay, but we still have, the shooting or the passing option in the defense, right? Or, for us, sometimes we take a passing option because we're just doing the shooting, okay? But like I said, some of his drills, those would be, game-like, depending on how competitive that situation is. If it's a specific shooting drill, like we're really reducing it out of a game and we're really focusing on shooting, then it would be a game-like drill to me. If we're actually playing 3-on-3 and we're getting shots out of a 3-on-3, to me that's more game shooting. Below that then is specific exercises, all right? And this is what I was talking about when I was talking about technique, okay, and improvement. So what exactly are you trying to improve? Okay, so, people put their drills on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and all that, okay? And it looks nice. It's a good drill, okay? But if you're going to take somebody else's drill, why are you using that drill? Okay, and to me, saying I'm going to improve shooting is too general. What are you doing to improve shooting? For me, I'm doing specific drills that I think work to change technique. Like I said, for some of them, it's just going off a right-hand dribble into shots so that we can get rid of this circle motion. For some, it's doing the ankle bounces so that we can try to bring the shot down. For some, they struggle shooting off the dribble because of how they pick up the ball, so that's what we're focusing on. So we come in and they say, okay, I don't shoot well when I'm breathing heavy. Okay, let's get you breathing heavy, now let's shoot. I have this big circle thing that I need to get rid of. Okay, what drill can we construct to get rid of it? And to me, it's not a matter of, okay, well now I'm going to start and I'm going to do one-hand form shooting. Because now, as soon as I pick up the ball, what am I going to do? I'm going to do the same thing. Right? Because the form shooting and the full shot off the catch or the full shot off the dribble, they're so different that you're working on different skills. Right? And so to me, the transfer between the two is going to be very, very minimal, if at all. Okay? So, typically that's the answer. Okay? Well, we shoot from here, so let's do a bunch of form shooting to shoot from here. But the problem for most players isn't that they shoot from here. It's how do they get to here. It's how they pick up the ball, or for most of them, that's how they learned how to shoot when they were young to compensate for a lack of strength. And nobody's ever had the time to try to change it. So they just kept shooting that way, and they're a 33% shooter, so they're good enough. So there's no incentive to break everything down, right? But just doing this for however long, to me, rarely changes that problem. Because as soon as you put them off the dribble, especially you put them off a left-hand dribble, okay, they're not now going to suddenly come and stop right here and shoot the ball. They're going to bring their hand to the ball, and they're going to come up, and they're going to have the same exact shot. Because that dribble is going to change it. Now you add a defensive player there that they're worried about shooting over, and they're definitely going to go back to their habit. All right? So it's a matter of how can I really make change to that shot? And I have to start, to me, I have to start as close as possible to what they already do. And like I said, perturb that in some way. Okay? So again, with the girl who circles her shot, it's a matter of almost everything we do is a right-hand dribble. Because I want her coming, picking it up, and working on bringing her left hand across her body to pick up the ball so that she's starting from here, and then she goes in more or less a straight line to here, and then everything else is good. From here up is fine. The problem is this, because this leads to this, and that leads to misses. But when she brings the ball up, if it's off a left-hand dribble or right-hand dribble, when she starts here and goes in a straight line, even though technically she's shooting from the left side of her body, which many people may think is incorrect. Others may watch Kevin Durant and then think it's the proper way to shoot. All right? But when she shoots from here, now her shot's pretty good. And so it's a matter of that small change. And so when we're working, those are the drills have a very specific purpose because we're working on one specific thing that we want to change. It's not about improving shooting. It's about getting rid of a circle motion, right? With the girl that brings the ball above her head, everything we're doing is to stop bringing the ball above her head without me having to say, don't bring the ball above your head. Don't bring the ball above your head. It's about creating drills where, so a lot of what we do with her, I want you to shoot the ball as fast as you can to the point where she gets ridiculous, right? But then she slows down a little bit, and now all of a sudden she's shooting from here instead of from here. Because if you're trying to shoot the ball quickly, you can't bring the ball back behind your head to throw it forward. You're here, right? So just that cue, I want you to, shoot as fast as you can, faster, faster, to the point where it's ridiculous. Okay, now try to make it. Fast as you can, but make it. Fast as you can, but make it. And now it's changed her footwork, and it's changed how she shoots the ball. And it's starting to transfer into our scrimmage situations. Did you have a question?
Something like that. You just kind of experiment with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, everything's experimentation. Yeah, and that's why when people ask me for shooting drills, I don't really have shooting drills. I do, I have a couple, but mostly what I'm doing is I see a player, I see an issue that I think I want to fix, and then I just play with it. And so, like I said, the three bounces, the ankle bounces, it works for some players. I have one player on my team who I've told to stop squatting I had another player the other day where when we had her go into a deep squat, it actually started to help her shot, right? So one player I'm telling one thing, another player I'm telling the exact opposite, right? But it works for the one player and it worked for the other player. That's all I'm trying. To me, it doesn't matter what the instruction is as long as it works. So that brings me kind of to the last point. So the last group of exercises are general exercises. And to me, this is what most, I'm out of time, huh? This is what most shooting drills end up being general drills. To me, game spot, game shots, whatever, game speed, those are general shooting drills. All we're trying to do is get reps, okay? To me, these drills are best if we're trying to build confidence. Okay, so I want to see the ball go through the basket. I'm just going to get a bunch of reps, okay? Because if I shoot 100 shots in a row, my shot's going to go in more at the end than it does at the beginning, right? And so most of the drills that I see people doing, to me, are general drills, okay? And so they may have an effect on improvement, okay? But to me, the transfer is going to be minimal, and most of the effect on improvement is going to be in terms of building confidence. So if I know that I shoot the same shot every single day, I start to feel confident with it. So then I go into a game, I get the same shot, I start to feel confident, okay? And so that's why to me, it's not that, any specific drill necessarily is wrong, okay? But I think we want to understand what we're trying to do, and specifically what we're trying to improve. Because if I'm trying to improve confidence, that's different than if I'm trying to change technique to improve this player. If I say this player already she's got good technique, she's got confidence, I just need to get her more accustomed to shooting in a game. Okay, well now there's got to be a defensive player, there's got to be a choice, right? And so if you know exactly why you're doing it, almost any drill can work, okay? But to me, that's the biggest thing is, why am I doing it? And stopping at, I'm trying to improve shooting is too general. We want to go a little bit further and how exactly are we trying to improve shooting? All right, I think I've gone over my time. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, feel free to ask publicly or privately. I guess I will be back here momentarily with more about sports psychology.